This video is probably going to be a long one. I'm going to cover a lot of teams that we've got from Summit and a lot of the situations. So we have quite a unique situation here where I can actually VOD the grand finals to see what their strats were and how they were playing things out, because the meta as Summit is going to be the exact same. So I kind of want to go through a couple things. Firstly, how Clix and Higs ended up not doing that good after winning 2 games in a row and being first. Another couple teams like Swizzy and Pixie off spawn, why they struggled day one. There's a Middle East team I know who qualled playing simple edit. We saw the SAS and Scary going crazy on day one, a double controller Spanish team, so I want to kind of see some of their pop-off matches. So yeah, this is going to be a long video. There's going to be a lot to talk about in this, so strap in. So let's start things off with Clix and Higs. They have 2 very successful games, which were victory royales. They won both kind of in a very, very similar fashion, but then every other game, kind of they fell off. You know, their overall leaderboard standing was 10th, and the first few games, they were 5th, first, very low eliminations, 2, 4, 3, and then you can see 32nd, 18th, 12th, blah, 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 blah. Not great. These first 2 games, the wins, or not first game, second and third game here, are very similar, and I want to show you why they succeeded, but why these games were still very messy, and I don't want to say lucky, that's not the right way to word it, but they were kind of anti-meta wins. This is game number 2. As you notice, the zone pulls up, and this is onto a mountain here. So this hill, if I zoom all the way out, it pulls all the way up, and you can see they've done a really good job of marking the hill, the highest point that's in the zone, and they're going to commit to taking height super duper early here. So you can see as zone is about to open up, they use a fizz grenade combined with each individually using an overdrive grenade to get to the front side to claim height super early. So you can see they're over here up on height, the rest of the lobby way down below. So if zone pulls up, they're in such a good spot. Even if zone pulls like across this direction, it pulls towards dead side, they're in a really good spot. If it pulls north, they've basically got the best spot in the lobby because they're on height relatively early here. But as you notice, if we look in the bottom right, when the map pops up here, I say bottom right, then I actually open the map, the zone does not pull. It kind of pulls this way, which is still very favorable to them because they can just kind of cut in this side here, whereas everyone else is going to kind of pull in this side. Now the actual way they play height is good, right? You can notice that Higs doesn't just tarp across. They're using overdrive nades to kind of create separate towers here. So if I zoom out, sorry Avenger, I don't want to watch you. You've got like Higs at the front side here, and then you've got Clix at the back side. They're just tarping all the way across. They're actually just using overdrive grenades to go like area to area, which means there's less chance for a team to like just fly up on your head because you're split, right? One person can look back. So you can see like Aegis and Rituals here, for example, is using the nade. What is it called? The Flober grenade. Most likely this team is now going to use an overdrive grenade to fly. So you can see Higs is like spotting him, right? He's looking directly at him, looking out for the cloud, waiting to see them rotate. Looked away a little bit too early there. I don't even know if they did end up actually rotating to the front. But as you can see, they're kind of just going tower to tower, and this is working relatively good in the 8th zone. This is important again. Every single time you look back, the meta this season was using the nades. As you notice, he's always looking back into this Flobery grenade because these players nearly always are going for height retakes. This was Veno and Curve's main strategy to retake height, which they did a lot during this. If you've watched my Veno and Curve video on this channel already, you'll have seen that like this is the way that they take height. Spoiler, this is kind of why this strat just doesn't really work and just playing height generally. So they've taken it super early. You've got Higs up to the front side. You've got Clix playing higher. They're looking out for anyone who's trying to take it from them with nades. Zone continues to pull far here. And yet again, you can see Veno and Curve down in the bottom left. Actually kind of bad. I was going to say maybe they've noticed the footsteps in the back here, but they're kind of missing an opportunity that Veno and Curve here are using the nade down below. And they're hyper fixating on the team at the back. Not sure if that's a bad play. It's hard to tell in the moment exactly what they're doing, but they're not really paying attention to a team who could height retake from them here. But again, it's not a bad play to like see the footsteps of the players back in the storm. Same thing from Higs, straight to the front side, not just creating a full tarp. Kind of milks a little bit, but does manage to actually get up. And then they have like another tower on height. Same thing, towards the end of the zone, you can just see where they're focused right now. Now, unfortunately, no one's actually in this. So, you know, they're just waiting for teams to try and retake height for them. Oh, so it's teams all the way back here. But similarly, they're doing the right things at this moment. They are focusing on the right spots whilst holding height. Now, here's the problem. Veno and Curve are a very height-focused team as well. And you can see that they're to the front side. And because they're just holding height this way and then a zone is pulling this direction, this is like a perfect opportunity just to chop out height in the transition. So they get chopped out. You see Clix and Higs fall. They still have it, but they waste a bunch of materials, obviously trying to build up and all that kind of stuff. Just classic like height chop out. Great play from Veno just to kind of chop height, grief them. Don't go for it at that point though. You know that they've just wasted a bunch of mats. Clix and Higs decide to play pizza in the backside. Now, I'm not entirely sure why they do this. I haven't thought too deeply about it. My theory is if they got chopped out, they're probably going to know Clix and Higs are going to try and retake height for them. Sorry, not Clix and Higs. Veno and Curve are going to try and retake height, which is exactly what happens in a second here. So they play the pizza, covering their top, so they can play the storm, and then they can basically save mats on this rotate, because all they need to do is just overdrive and retake height. So it's almost like they're giving up height so that they can then retake height later. So then as they do this, they get blocked a little bit. Unfortunately, there's a bit of server lag here. But this is the exact moment that that Veno also goes to take height. So as they're flying in sky, firstly, Clix has 10 HP, almost dies. And then they just kind of like both 50-50 curve and Veno, who are up on height, and it works, but they've basically both just psychoed height at this exact same time and 50-50'd. You can notice material wise, because they've played height the whole time and zones have just pulled far and they've not really got any refreshes, Higs has 26 builds and Clix has 15. But now they've lost height to Bolts and Acorn, so they kind of just have to do the exact same thing that everyone else is doing and just psycho height using the nades and hope to get it back at the same time. Again, this was the meta for the entire event. Very nice shot there, I must say, from Clix. He gets the mats refreshed a little bit, and then they go on to win the game from here. But as you can tell, the entire strategy is take height super early, hold it as long as we can. Then the next game that they won, which was game number 3, you can see a very similar thing. However, they're even higher in the sky because they've actually got a very favorable zone pool. So, in this top left corner of the map, right, up near their drop spot at Wonky, playing height in this area of the map is so good because of the trees. You can play higher than you normally would, which makes it even more difficult for players to use the Flowberry Fizz combined with the nade to try and retake height from you because it's just much easier for you to kind of see it happen. Basically, this game, I won't watch the whole thing. I've already gone through it, and they essentially just stay up on height the entire game. So the 2 wins that they got, they took height in 7th or 8th zone, super duper early. I was going to say, I not necessarily held it all the way. They held it all the way in this game, but basically fought for height the entire time through both of those matches. Now, the reason I say this is quite anti-meta is because on EU, for example, I don't know how many times this happened on NA. On EU, there was only a single match where a team was able to actually hold height throughout the entire game. So if you're going to try and play height super early, you're just asking for teams to try and retake it from you. Now, I haven't watched the later games. I'm going to jump in a second to see what went wrong, but I would imagine there was a few games they were able to take height and then just lost it because of teams just overdrive grenading on their heads. So here's a really good example of why this doesn't work, right? So this is the 10th zone now. They're down to 24 builds and 32 each. So there's still a bunch of moving zones, right? You're in a top 13. Clix drops down. Unfortunately, he does make a mistake and die. But this isn't even the thing I'm worried about with this match in particular. If you watch from then Higgs' POV here, you notice, obviously, unfortunately, there's a bit of server lag. But at the same time, guess what happens? A team flies up, retakes height from them using the overdrive grenades. So you can see Clix drops down there, and as they do that, another team, completely unrelated, hits the overdrive grenades. It salts team enough as they go flying up. So just by sitting on height and this strategy of just claiming height early and holding it, that worked a lot in trios, and that might work in a different meta. But trying this in a meta where literally every team is psychoing on height, and look, guess what's happening from the backside now? Curve and Veno. So even if Higgs was holding it there, they're just gonna die at the same time. So yeah, as I was about to say, holding height really early in this meta just was not a good strategy at all, and it seems to be that's the way that they were going over and over again. Little preview at my long form video, but one of the stats is that there were 23 height retakes, successful height retakes in EU. That's averages just under 2 height retakes a game. So if you tried to take that early, on average there are 2 different teams who are successfully retaking height from you. So I just think the strategy of taking height early and holding it just isn't good for the end game in this meta. As I mentioned, Curve and Veno, they're playing height, for example, right here, but they took it way later in the 10th zone. They get a good refresh and then take it from the backside of Storm rather than just holding it early and not necessarily getting a good refresh earlier on. Another important thing to mention about height is that if you take it early, it's very difficult to get a good refresh in the 10th zone, and if you need a good refresh to get you a bunch more materials so that you can play height for longer. Whereas teams who are in mid and low ground, they have the ability to box fight a team next to them, and you can kill someone who has good materials and then go for a height retake when you have a lot of mats afterwards. So generally, I think this idea of just playing height early, it just wasn't a particularly great strategy for endgame. I know there's a bunch of other things, they struggle with Storm Surge in some game, is Grands, that kind of happens as well. And of course, I've not watched every single match, but just based on the matches that I've seen, it seems like that to me was probably a big flaw in the way that they tried to play this Grands. One thing I am interested in seeing about how they're going to do at Globals is now that they're contested by Shark and Teeny, because of course they were completely uncontested in Grands, whereas Shark and Teeny were contested in EU and they ended up placing 5th. And Shark and Teeny did manage to split this drop spot off spawn in Summit, and I'm not sure how much I think they'll be happy to split this come Globals, but my question more becomes, how will Clix and Higgs play with less loot now? Because they're used to having this entire drop spot to themselves, and also think if they try to get us sneak plays and stuff off from Shark and Teeny, to get early surge, that's not going to work. So their early game strategy is also probably going to need to change up a lot from how they played this Grands too. So they're probably going to make a lot of changes coming into Globals. Early surge, not an option. Going to play with less loot. In-game strat, probably not going to work. Obviously, they might change the meta, right? If overdrive grenades and the flow grenades are not in the meta anymore, this height strategy might work. But for now, with the current meta that it is, I just don't think that's the game plan that you can just execute on. An off spawn that I really want to look at and think about here is how Cold and Rapid are going to go up against Swizzy and Pixie at Dark Domain. I always forget the name of this. Now, on day 2, Swizzy and Pixie were 4th on points. So 360 was what Sky and Scroll got. You know, these teams were unbelievably consistent, whereas Swizzy and Pixie, you know, 4th overall was unbelievable. If you look at the match history from day 2, an 8th, 4th, 1st, 2nd. If they hadn't died off spawn in these last 2 games, by the way, this second day from them would have been unbelievable. And, you know, when you compare it, sorry, my camera might have been in the way there, apologies, but when you compare that to their first day, where they were 48th with 24 points, that is unbelievable. Like, this match history from my GOAT, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Now, I'm not one to team blame, but holy moly. I mean, I'll be honest, Pixie did not have a good first day. Pixie stunk it up on the first day. Full donut. Whereas Swizzy got 6 elims. And I will be honest, I actually expected Pixie to play better on day 2. He did, he got 6. But Swizzy was playing out of his mind on day number 2. 16 elims by himself. Unbelievable, like, damage ratios and stuff from him as well. I did not mean to accidentally leak that Pixie did not have a great Grands. It happens to everyone. He's had a great year last year. It is what it is. But Swizzy went absolutely nuclear. So I do want to watch, like, a good game from Swizzy, see what he's been doing. Like, I'll be honest, the cumulative stats here are not, they're not looking great. So yeah, basically on day 2 alone, when you look at the like overall leaderboard, they went up to 16th. Obviously managed to qualify through, so massive from day 2. If they manage to like replicate this day 2 on day number 1, unbelievable. Swizzy is the global champ for a reason. So I'm gonna watch their 6 elim win. So as you can see, when I zoom in right off the bat, this is kind of one of the problems that they had, is that they were firstly contested by Gonzo's team. I actually don't even know what's going on with the rest of this off spawn here, because you've got 2 other teams. You've got Lunex's team and you've got Zany's team. Gonzo's already lost Trulex. So basically what happened on day 1, for reference, they had a rough day 1 because they were surprise conned, and they did tweet saying they basically just weren't ready, right? Like, they weren't prepared to be contested off spawn, and they basically just got pooed on like 6 games in a row on day 1. They prepped, came back way stronger on day number 2. But like, the difficulty here is the fact that it's not only is this drop spot taken by one team contesting them, you have a bunch, and a lot of other teams are like rotating in as well to third party. So this drop spot was a total mess come Grands, and I do wonder if the same thing might happen in Summit. Like, look at the glide for this drop spot. It is genuinely just 4 teams landing here, which is unbelievable given I don't think like a single team has performed well out of this on EU, like from this drop spot at all. Absolute madness. Maybe it's just because it was so conned on day 1. Swizzy Tech was real nice. So what they were doing is they were like mantling, and then was he taking fall damage? How does he not take fall damage there, by the way? I don't know what the tech is for this, but yeah, managed not to take fall damage. I saw people like chopping through, like Truly did the same thing there. I saw you could like chop through here and be first to get to the chest, as Truly did, but good awareness from Swizzy to actually get the gun. But yeah, he's able to get the first knock onto Truly. So first elim, so day 2, much more prepared to like actually fight off spawn. So you can basically see that Burke and Zany are taking underneath and this kind of east side. And then Lunex's team is taking the south and also going underneath. So like, you know, one of the good things about this drop spot is you've got so much loot under in the basement. So you've got 2 teams cutting off that loot, which leaves Swizzy and Pixie like just this building, which is already being conned by Gonzo as well. Seems like they're basically just hunting down Gonzo since they already killed Truly this entire time. And yeah, oh, you can see his legs there just sitting in full piece. Really nice pinch, and Gonzo's insta wiped. Swizzy, lovely awareness to mantle over the top, not trying to go do something awkward in the window. Beautiful bit of cone, bit of piece, cone in. Bang trade. Lovely. Very, very nice. Right, the one thing is they will not struggle with metal. You know, the entire of this drop spot is just made of metal, basically. So at least they have that in the mid-map. You can see they very instantly, very early blocked off the mending machine as well. We've already got a bunch of big pods. As you can see, Swizzy kind of not bought them out, but bought a bunch of them there. So they've already managed to, like, you know, they've got a solid mid-map position for Surge. They've got early damage off. They're positive on net Surge because they managed to get the 2 eliminations off spawn. So if they get cap mats, good enough ammo, which they already have, and a roughly okay zone pool, then, you know, the game's already pretty well set up for them. Then, since they have a pretty close to center zone pool, you just got towering up on the very, very center. Pixie just refarming down below, while Swizzy's just trying to get any other damage possible. It's pretty common for a lot of teams to, like, come into this center map area. You can see Jerry's team too. But also at the same time, they've lost control over the mending machine here, as both Lunex's team has then come in to grab whatever they want from it. All right, so when they leave their drop spot, you know, this is 4th zone, so this is way later into the game. It's kind of close to their drop already, so it's basically south here. Notice the mats, only 82, so they both got camp metal, and how many? 132. So Pixie's basically camp, but Swizzy has way less because really they've just stayed in the drop spot the entire time, which hasn't given them any opportunity to get brick or wood. So they've just split mats, right? And so basically they're playing this game out with 40 less builds each. than everyone else, just purely based on them being contested in the mess of spawn. Already at like a massive disadvantage. It kind of means that as they're rotating into this 5th zone, they basically just have to kind of re-farm as they go. So, you know, I bet they're hitting this brick. Yeah, there we go. Which means this kind of max distance rotate for them is slowed down pretty considerably, because they've also re-farmed a bunch of wood earlier. So they're now up to like 100, 103, 122. You know, as you get into closer to the 5th zone, it's much more difficult to do this as other teams are starting to spray you. So not great. So yeah, when you're in this kind of situation, right, 58 builds, 106, now that they've managed to make it into 6th zone, like, you just need a refresh early. So in this situation, of course, Akira's I've just completely left their back open, unfortunately for him. Get knocked by a third party from the front. So they do manage to get a nice refresh here. And then later on, they also kill Karama. So with a playstyle like this, like if you're playing scuffed, you just have to be able to fight. Luckily, like Swizzy and Pixie are incredibly good fighters. Maybe this, you know, the stats from this tournament may not show that. But if every single match of the summit, they're kind of scuffed similar to this, like if there's the same way, you're going to have to see these guys get super aggressive in the mid game. And I don't know what Karama is doing right now. But yeah, basically killing those two, got them cap each, and then a bunch of extra mats too. Now you may notice, this is a height game that they won, and they claimed it in the 8th zone. Now, if you go back to what I was saying about this being a not great strategy for Clix and Higs, I also kind of just agree that this is just not great for Pixie and Swizzy to do the exact same thing. Now, it worked out in this match, of course, but let's look at the spreadsheet. Now, this here was all of the different height takes. This is my 23 and counting, as you can see here. Now, it was just taken for free, as you can see here. This is all data for my main channel video, which will be out at the end of the week. But as you notice, game 9, 8th zone, Swizzy and Pixie take it, and they won the match. And my definition of how they took it is that it was free. There was no one there. And thing is, the zone didn't get taken back from them, right? Not a single person retook it. This is the retakes here. And as you can see, game 9, which is this game here, 0. Now, you've also noticed that game 5 has 0 if you're keen-eyed. However, the only reason that there was no one in this game which took height is because height was free from 8th and 9th zones because nobody wanted to take it. So Prax and Glubsy, who had literally no mats, just ramped up to height this match and just held it from like 10th all the way through. So they didn't even take it early. But as you notice, this is the only game from EU, which we're watching right now, where height was taken early in the 8th zone and then held all the way through. And that was because the zones just kept pulling back. So because there's all of this mess down below, right? The zones basically kept like circling around in this area back and forth, which meant that there's no real good opportunity for a team to actually fly up using the overdrive grenade combined with the Flowberry Fizz. You know, teams could potentially have gone in, but basically not a single team did it, and this was the only game where that happened. So, you know, for Swizzy and Pixie, this strat also worked out for them, but I guess it's not something that you can just apply to every single team. I would also add, though, just because it's not a win strategy, and if you look at both Pablo, Chino, and both like Sky Scroll, who were 1st and 2nd on EU, for example, same with Venom and Curve, who won in A. I don't not 100% sure about them. There wasn't a single game where they tried to take height this early. I mean, those two teams on EU who won and placed 2nd weren't on height almost at all. So, you know, I can't sit and say, yeah, just take height early every game, because the best teams weren't doing it, and the teams who were trying to do it mostly did not perform that well. So looking at this, I am less concerned. My main concern here is more if like one of these 3 teams want to rotate in or something, because we've just seen that they can perform and play well with 3 other teams sitting here off spawn. So if Cold and Rapid land here and Swizzy Pixie land here, they could easily just split like south side, north side, not fight each other, and then like be able to play out the games from there. I'm not overly too concerned about these two fighting off spawn. So Controller here plays on simple edit and managed to qual. So I want to watch one of their games. I want to watch the one where he frags the most, which is game number 9, and see how he's playing out. But one thing that I'm slightly concerned about with the smaller region teams is that these points, so say 544 in first, is like 200 less than the big regions, which to me shows that like this team, like FKS and Hero, for example, like the skill gap between them and the rest of the lobby is not really that high, when on the bigger regions you have the better players who are getting more points in a harder lobby, which means that like I'm more concerned about the small region teams coming into this summit than I was previously, especially the teams who've made it to the lower bracket on day number 2. Now, I will add though, they were kind of landing in like a not great split, right? You see teams who did well throughout most of FNCS in the big regions land and drop spots, but they're landing in this gas station right to the middle of the map. I see they actually do get flown on and snuck on here. As you can see, landed straight in his head. Let's see the simple edit piece. Oh, the simple edit full box. Whew. The simple edit full box goes crazy. The scroll wheels are, the resets are always pretty slow. Okay, just literally just a 50-50 after that. Yeah, the resets on simple edit are always kind of slow. So easy to kind of like jump into their box. As soon as someone gets on the wall, you can just simple edit like that. That's nuts. All right, so Middle East is actually crazy stacked, 73 up. I've heard the servers on this region are atrocious as well, which actually makes simple edit slightly better. Because if you got to think about you're in a laggy lobby, if you try to edit a wall, you have to first wait for the tiles to pop up, select it, and then confirm. So there's two areas where it lags. Firstly, when you're selecting the build, and then after confirming. But on simple edit, on high ping, all you need to do is look at the right tile and then press confirm. So if you're in a laggier lobby, like this is actually way better, honestly. I don't know about way better, but obviously you're at an advantage. So here, for example, right? Firstly, I don't know what this other team is doing, quite frankly. They're just charging up with no HP. I guess they're below surge, right? Nice little right hand peek, gets the kill. But here, he's holding the wall, edits, places a double. There you go. It's super laggy, but look how easy you can just double edit down, right? Just edit the ramp, edit the floor, and then hit the bang. Well, he didn't even shoot. I think his teammate killed him. But yeah, you can see in situations like that when you're sitting behind a window where you can just like create two layers and then instantly edit through it in a lobby that's like this laggy. You'd never be able to do that fast if you're on non-simple edit, especially on controller. So scenarios like this in endgame that I think are really funny, where simple edit like really is good. So you can see he's kind of boxed up. He's a solo left alive, and there's a player here on the wall, which is Mick, right? So he's scouting around. He walks up and he ADS pumps. Now in replay mode, you can't see, but you can actually see through the wall when you do this. You can see that this player's here, so he knows his crosshair is basically on him, right? You can see he moves his crosshair to on top of the player. So as soon as he edits, which is just a single click, the crosshair placement here is unbelievable. Like imagine if he was on normal edit, he might be able to do like a normal window, but he'd never be able to do a peanut butter edit in this and have your crosshair land back here because his crosshair would be like facing up top left. So he can just shoot instantly. He's using his cone, and it's funny here because you can't scout, right? Because on simple edit, you can't just hold the edit. So here he's in his cone, but you can't actually like look around. So just kind of looking through the floor, waiting. Same here. There's, you're at a disadvantage because you can't do like a 3-tile cone edit to protect yourself. So here he's just done the cone edit to like place 2, but you can't do this other corner to like hide himself in it as he heals here either. So cool couple things with simple edit. I didn't see anything particularly crazy. They don't really frag out in a lot of other ones, so I don't know how many other... Well, I'm not going to watch another match, let's be honest. But just know there's a guy who's made it to Summit using simple edit. So interesting to see how the fighting goes out at Summit against like some of the best players. Just simple editing in their face and going for bangs. We would also add they are still landing at the same split here that they were landing at where they qualled from. However, I'm a little more concerned because you have these 3 teams landing in Sandy right now. And if any of those, grab a little loot, say from this side, like they might try and just run and key over thinking, yeah, these guys are free kills. You might have these guys, Victor V or Pablo and Chino doing the same. I don't know if all 3 of these teams are going to land here right now. Currently, it seems like they might be, but maybe one of these teams will dip and then they'll split this 3 ways or 2 ways. I'm not sure. So I want to watch a Pete and Puyo game. I felt like they didn't really have much magic in this. That's the word I'm going to use. Pete Puyo magic. Like a lot of really stinky games that you're not really used to seeing out of, especially in Grands. So I want to see how they actually won this game, like what they did, and then I want to watch what happened in these 2. This time they lost to a fight to the team who was like right at the bottom. Oh, generational oral. Oh, well, it's not generational oral loss because they did try to contest Veno's team in first to win. So big play there, but losing a fight against a team who was basically last on the leaderboard, not great. So let's watch this and then let's kind of see what happened in some of these other stinkier matches. 0 kills. I've never seen Pete and Puyo with 0 kills in my life. All right, so their strat for Surge is kind of really interesting. So if you notice per zone breakdown here, shout out Assyrian, this feature is goated. I don't know why I said it like that, but yeah, you can see 0 damage, 50, 22, 0, 0, and then 6th zone, they get 175 here. And if I scroll down 7th zone, so basically 6th zone in the partials, they really start picking up. And you can see damage ratio 4. So, they took like 40 damage here while still dealing 175 and on and on. Another game, this one's very similar here where you've just got like 18. That's probably shooting someone out of the sky. 0, 108, 15, 0, 53. And then similarly in zone 6, they kind of cook. Same with zone 7, 248. But one of the problems with this strategy, so as you can see in this match, for example, right? The way this ends up working out is the idea, I don't know if this is their thought process or Raz's thought process, how to do this. For the most part, it's taking 0 damage in like zones 0 to 4. So before the first partial, in the vast majority of their games, they have 0 damage. This infinite sign is also 0 because they dealt 15. So 0 damage taken. However, here they're an 18, 108, 115. And then, so before the first partial partial pops up with his, 5th zone, they've really only dealt in this game like 140 damage. Now, the risk of this is if you pull a max zone zone, you then have to rotate that max partial, which means you're much more likely to just take damage back. So I'm going to check this game in particular. As you can see, kind of what happened here is that then they're forced every single partial zone to deal more and more damage, which if they're in this instance taking more damage means they're just going to be below the Storm Surge threshold. So before I even look at this game, I'm imagining they're rotating on max distance partials here and getting fried every single time they do it, draining all their heals. And this is going to put them below Storm Surge and the Storm because of Net Surge, because they did minimal damage in the first like 0 to 5 zones. So they're trying to be like super safe. However, if you pull a bunch of max zones after doing that, you kind of put yourself at risk of just going under anyway. So as I sit here and look, unsurprisingly, I think they're on this mending machine here. And this is a pretty good play because it's the same thing Veno and Curve are doing on this mending machine in Dark Dominion. This is actually the same game they're doing it. That right there is Curve and Veno. When you pull a max distance zone, obviously this is a rough rotate to make when you're in. If you pull it here and you've got whites, you can rotate here or you can go here if it pulls this way. If it pulls to you, obviously you're in a really good spot. So by positioning here, they're gambling that they're not going to pull, you know, well, the zone's not going to pull max. Unfortunately, the zone always pulls max. That's how Fortnite works. And here you can see they're 58 above. As we know, they've only actually dealt like 114 damage. So this surge isn't particularly good for them at this minute. You can see now by the time they've actually rotated, they're halfway through this rotation and now they're 219 above. This is not because they've taken any damage. This is because other people are dealing tons of damage during these partial rotates. You can see now as they're rotating, they're trying to deal more damage, but they're also just taking a bunch. Like so far, Puyo's lost 40. He's just been tagged there for another 21. So now, again, 6 zone pulls completely max distance for them. They're stuck in a spot where everyone else is. And I imagine they're going to do the exact same thing where they're going to lose a bunch more damage. Pete just lost 80 damage there as he just got hit in the bush. So now they're only 180 above. Puyo solo rotates. Pete follows, taking a bit of storm damage. That doesn't really matter that much. They managed to get back together. Good output from Puyo. He's also hitting shots there, so that's saved them, got them up a little bit. Another rotate. Another nade coming out from Pete. Loses 50 damage there. Now he's only 80 above, which is a good spot. 76. You can see that they're starting to get closer and closer to being below. 20 above. Now Puyo's taking a bit more damage as well. 8. So they're kind of sitting on the edge. And even the game that they won, I watched it before this just to have a look. And it was very similar. Like the 6 zones for them, if they pull a max distance zone, they're kind of always just losing so much because they're not getting a ton of damage really early on. And again, now they've done a late rotate again, and they're basically just getting lobby focused at this point. And I remember watching this on the broadcast, just thinking, yeah, this game's over. So from here, on top of the fact that they're getting lobby focused, obviously they're getting damaged at the same time, which means that they're about to lose more storm surge damage too. But all the hards are gone. It's just let's be real, this game was just kind of wraps at this point. Yeah, and now see when the next zone pops up, obviously because they've been lobby focused and they had those rotates that are kind of rough. They made a good rotation, I will add to that. Like they did kind of the best what they could have with the scenario given, but with the lobby focus and stuff, now they're just like 240 below and Pete has absolutely nothing. So gets a kill. Unfortunately, just jumps on another player's box, and then Puyo's left to solo clutch, and he does a good job getting a few points. By the end of the day, actually, how does he make out with this? I don't know. Nice kill on the dragon. So you can see in kind of some of their other more successful games. So this was a 5th place. Where in the 3rd zone instead, they got 487 damage, like 7 damage ratio. So they took a fight here. You can see they got 2 elims in the 3rd zone. Successful, probably a lurk. And then if you scroll down, that means they didn't really need to do as much. Maybe they got a better like 6th zone pull this game. But yeah, that then kind of sets you up way better for the end game. So yeah, you can see the difference here. They're taking a fight with Skinny Cat and Batman Nick, and they just wiped them out, I think, or they wiped out someone there. Maybe they didn't wipe out both of them, but they get 2 elims anywhere at this point. And then you can see here they are positioned in the center of the zone, and the 6 zone pulls. So kind of the combination this game of getting a little bit more damage earlier because they took a fight that they were successful in, and then also they, didn't pull the max 6 zones. They didn't rip their damage off as they rotated that. Very similar to, Curve and Veno. Most of their surge strategy was taking fights early. This meta, everyone thinks you got to play super passive, but if you're successful in taking a fight really early on and you can quick dead someone without taking much damage back, you're going to be 200, 300, 400 above from that alone. And then any tags you get on top of that add up a lot. So then you've kind of got damage in reserve for if you pull really bad max zones. So similarly, 9th place here, you can see they got way more. An elim and an elim here. So they were taking fights. 7th place, so they got 500 damage in zone 3, 200 here. The win they got was one of the only ones. I think the win that they got here was one of the only games where they really didn't have like a ton of damage in this area where they actually like performed well, of course. They didn't take a lot of damage on the 6th rotate. I can't remember if it was max them. But you can see, like, obviously they need a bunch more elims here, even though the damage ratios were pretty bad. Honestly, I watched this win that they had, and it was very messy. Like, they ran out of mats just before endgame. Got a great refresh by jumping in a box, and then just psychoed on height and killed Curve. But yeah, you can see 21st, similar kind of story that we've got here, where a lot of the damage is kind of bad here, and then, you know, they get set up nicely here. I don't know if this is a Sorcerer's Gauge, because they actually did really good getting damage here. I don't know if they pulled these zones. I imagine they would have, because 3 damage ratio, 11, and then really bad on this 8th zone. I don't know what happened on this rotate. Apologies, that entire time while I was talking about Storm Surge, I think my camera was blocking it. I meant to have my camera on the left. Hopefully I verbalized what I was saying enough. But Pete Puyo, they're still landing in the same drop spot they were, squibbly. So their options for taking fights around them, if that's what they want to do, are kind of a little bit tough. You know, they've got Hari and Cammy west of them, which, let's be honest, these guys are pummeling through them in a fight. But I would imagine these guys might rotate out quickly. Let's be real. Like, they don't want to be hanging around Pete Puyo for too long. Swizzy, Pixie, and Cold and Rapid, far from easy fights. And as we've already established, they're probably going to split and be stacked, you know, positioned up in this drop spot already. Real tough. Coyo and Yuma, you know, are you going to fight Coyo? I mean, Pete versus Coyo is the kind of W key fight that we're looking for. And then there's a fight south of them, Nebs, Nathan, and Mud Sphinx. This is probably their best opportunity to get a third party, to be honest with you. But at the same time, like, these teams aren't total pushovers either. And it depends how fast this goes over. You're not keying my boy Cringe, there's no way. So around them, like, I'm not super confident with the teams they have set out and, like, their off-spawn situation here, because most of the con teams are, like, all the way on the northeast for some reason. You know, EU Grands was all down here. Summit seems to be all top right. Yeah, I'm not really sure. They're gonna have to figure out a strat to get, like, you know, 300-400 above every single game before partials to make sure they don't 50-50 the zone that are kind of really bad max pulls. I don't know how good their off spawn situation is looking. We know Squibbly's just like an insane drop spot though, so we'll see. All right, speaking of Cringe and Twi, they became 8th overall, whereas they have the 3rd best average placement. Of course, like Sky and Scroll and Chino Pablo were way better. Oh, 4th, sorry. Vico's, I can't believe Vico's placement was good. I swear they died every game from at least that's what the broadcast seemed to show. Super consistent and not really fragging. You know, they got 27 elims, like way lower than everyone else above them, even like everyone below them for the most part as well. So I want to see kind of how they were playing this, because I don't feel like we saw a lot of their strats at all throughout the broadcast. Firstly, it is actually insane. The XP42 org has signed both Cringe and Cringe. You have 2 XP42 Cringes. All right, so their drop spot choice is this hill to the south. So as we know, I think they're planning to take all of this anyway during Summit. I don't see anyone trying to take all this. So they've actually performed with way less than they had. So they actually like did really good in Grands already with way less loot than they're planning to take. Obviously, you know, come Summit, another team will probably come and try and nab some of this. As I have opened up, the early and mid game may not be that interesting. As you can see, here's the drop. If I just scroll, you can see up until the 6th zone, they just literally stay here on this hill the entire time. Very, very similar, of course, to Pete that we just saw. They're not getting tons of damage early. In fact, here they took 40. So, you know, they're 23 above. Now there's 0, 23, 23. So at this point, they're basically a net plus 46, which is fine to get you through some of these earlier games. But again, as we already know, like this is a rough rotate for them, which now forces them to get a bunch of damage in the 6th zone for the 50 people surge. Then they've gotten above. So like, it's kind of similar to the difficulty of when you're not getting a lot of damage, as I said about Pete, is like later on, you're just forced to do it in the partials. And if you pull max zones, that's really tough. Unsurprisingly, because of that, there was a north zone pool. So the 50-50 pulled north to them. The 5th zone, that's when they end up. And now you can see they are below. So it's kind of like a very common thing where you got really passive teams where, as we already mentioned, if you get a rough rotate, man, good luck on net surge. They're actually getting ticked by active surge here and just get above because they managed to get that elim. Or did they even get the elim? Yeah, they managed to get the elim onto that body there, which put them 100 above. So they were on the edge of completely dying this game. I would say their saving grace this match is the fact that they did pull the 6th zone, right? They had a rough 5th zone and then they've pulled the 6th zone here. See a fight going on. Lovely double spray. They are both running I was going to say both running pistols. And I've just realized Cringe just 1 ammo. A single ammo here. Oh my god. Okay. Not ideal. So yeah, playing for their drop spot, like this is not a team where they will fight a lot, but they are heavily relying on good zones, I would say. Now, as much as they are a more passive team, I do love that they do still go for way more aggressive keys. Like here, they managed to take out Shark and Teeny, who they noticed is straight on the wall. Right, little replace. Very nice. Double straight. Insta wipe out Shark and Teeny. To be honest, if they didn't die in this game, they could have placed like top 3, top 2. Maybe not top 2. Maybe that was a little bit more adventurous, but big refresh from them. So again, first thing we're noticing here is the more passive teams, like, you know, Cringe and Twi, will struggle if they pull max zones. But then also at the same... Ooh, can't build there. That's unfortunate. But then also at the same time, like, if you just have to get a refresh in the like 6th or 7th zone, these kind of points, that can set you up as a way more passive team. Like, I would imagine these guys' end games from here is going to be really clean. Let's see if I spoke a little too early. Okay, I said it'd be super clean. It's not super clean, but they do some very nice things. So to start with, they're at the backside because they got that refresh. It's rough. You can see they're just individually solo nading. When you're in a tough spot, just solo rotate, get together. That's honestly some of the best way to do it. Really nice layer changing. You can see how he continually like focus on going down. That was like a scuffed rotate. Like if you notice the way he did that, it was scuffed. But at the same time, he managed to get all the way to front side by only taking 22 damage, or 23 damage. So really nice. Then once he gets to this layer, tarps all the way into Storm and pops a pizza to make sure he gets like a clean bit of space claimed. Now, if you watch my Sky and Scroll video, you'll know that time is one of the most important parts of any game. That's in my main channel, which isn't out yet. Spoiler there. So by tanking straight into the Storm, this gives them time to do whatever they want, right? They can look back for elims, they can go for refreshes. You know, it gives them options on whatever they want to do. Zone pulls, and they just insta go low ground, right? Insta drop because it pulls up and back and over. So the way that the zones pulled previously here, this is beautiful actually, was kind of this direction, I think, or was it this way? I can't quite remember. Great awareness. They were kind of getting onto the front side here, drop up and round as it kind of opens up into the edge as there's no one here. So they can get like a low ground front claim here just because they dropped all the way down. I was about to say this claim is very Sky and Scroll orientated. Like this is very similar to the way they were doing things. And guess who the team who's also doing this above them is? What a surprise. Lovely. Ends to try to push off Sky and Scroll. This is one of the difficult parts about playing low ground, is that when a team's near you, you can't just like tarp out. You have to force yourself through. So they nade, and I think they're going to run through Storm here, which would be very nice. Let's see if they do that or not. They've pre-naded and run all the way around in the front side of Storm. Real nice. So this saves them a bunch of mats without having to tarp. They got cut off, so they pre-naded and then just basically ran through Storm, and then they got pizzas to get their white heels up. Now, yet again, they've got a good front layer claimed. Another good low ground claim too. All right, zone pulls far. Straight away, Cringe is in. This is nice. So on low ground, they get cut off here. It's very similar to what they did before. They get cut off. He threw a nade down, and they don't have too many white heels. They just have pizzas. Don't want to waste too many of them. So now they're just sitting in the back. I was going to say wasting time. They're not wasting time. That's not the right way to word it. Sitting in the back. They're not going to go for height here. I'm presuming they're not a height team. However, they can stagger. So you can see they still have 100 builds and 31. So like a ton to play. So by sitting and playing Storm here, they can just allow themselves a free rotate, right? And just jump in from the backside. They have whites to allow themselves to do it. So they made this rotation to the front. As you see, they've claimed a good amount of space. And then as that next zone is about to appear here, 10th, 11th, 12th, can't remember which one we're at. Can't see because of this reload bug or replay bug, of course. 11th zone pops. Immediately, same thing. They know they can run to front side. So because it pulls towards the dead side where no one is, you can just immediately sprint and claim front low. This is very Sky and Scroll orientated. Something that they did a lot throughout their tournament. Now, I'm not just saying this because, you know, Cringe is Scottish. Obviously, that's not the only reason I'm saying it. I actually low-key think these guys could be a sleeper pick to come like top 10, top 15th or something like that. You know, if they get some good zones so they don't have to worry too much about getting battered on the rotates. You know, I already know that they're going to come up with like a really good mid-game strategy to get them to end game. And if they can keep getting like one refresh before moving zones and that kind of, you know, like they did in this match, like their end games are so solid. Like the layering they're choosing, things like that. So fantastic. The way that they change on zone transitions, all that. Very, very nice. I do worry a little bit that if more teams start playing low ground based on like the success of Sky and Scroll, that these guys might get cut off a little bit more and not be able to play it that much coming into Summit. But right now, what I'm seeing is super consistent. Very, very nice. All right, so Thomas and Focus is a team I do want to talk about as well. I mean, let's just show you the tweet. So Thomas posted, so who's posting the zones after Grand's finished? And if we look at the zones... the EU Grand zones were kind of crazy. This is their drop spot. And of course, you have like 7 zones here. 8 zones, sorry, to the west. 1 to the north. And then 4 over to the north as well. Sky and Scroll, who were here, ended up winning. I was actually speaking to Ferdoxy about this. And he said, I said, the zones surely aren't that different, for both teams. But I think one of the main things that really benefited them is A, they could get a bit of damage early. Also, like, look at the amount of 6 zone pulls that pulled towards this side of their drop spot here. So by them, like, playing Storm in this area for the most part, like they have this zone that pulls back, they have this, there's a bunch of like 6 zones that were really beneficial for them, whereas for these guys, well, I'll kind of show you the difference. So just looking at their first 2 games, first game they placed 25th. You'll notice a pattern, right? This is something obviously I talked about with Pete. 0 0 74 0 0 27. So pretty low damage. And then as you can see, like they almost did nothing in this first match. It was kind of crazy. I actually haven't watched this one to see if they go below surge and get ticked or not. 0 0 0. You can see they also basically took no damage either in like any of these partials. Essentially this first match they just kind of did nothing. All right, so here's like a visual of how like these zones actually did impact them. Usually I say complaining about zones in 2026 is like what you doing? Come on. However, I feel like for their strat it honestly did genuinely impact them quite a bit. And then back and forth of this is interesting. So if you want to play Storm until partials, so like Sky and Scroll here, if you notice, if I go all the way here, they can play deep in Storm way over here. Then when the partial appears, they can come out. As you notice, they're rotating down and they get into a good spot here. In order to be able to do that, you have to go into zone around the second zone. Storm around the second zone. Sorry, I worded that horribly. So if we go back and notice, Sky really isn't going into the Storm. It's still the second zone here, up at the top. And then that's when they start to go in, and then they play it from second and all the way up until sixth. So basically, you need to go in the Storm second. If you don't, you're going to take too much Storm damage, and then you will die to Storm sickness before the sixth zone. So what Thomas and Focus have to do when they pull a max distance zone, because they're like full edge of the map here, you'll notice that as they leave, they're like running away. So they're like not taking Storm damage in the first zone. And now that the second zone pulls far, you notice they stay there, and there's like no one they can tag for damage outside of Kirei here. And then they run back into their drop spot. So they have to like go out and back in, trying to get damage as they do this. And now as they're here, there's literally no one around them outside of Kirei, right? So you'll see that now they're playing Storm. There's a men. Is there a men machine here? I can't remember. There's definitely one up here anyway that they go play for like medkits and stuff. Yeah, I think they're getting medkits there. I can't remember. Either way, they play a mending machine, and now they play Storm. But even then, like with a max distance zone that now pulls all the way over here, right? They've not already pulled like a very favorable fifth zone here. So now they actually have to run out. So they have to run out at this point and then run in. So they don't really actually get the benefit of playing Storm, because obviously the benefit of Storm is what Sky and Scroll do, and they get into like a good position here. So like they're in the center, whereas, you know, Thomas HD is just probably going to end up in this spot, which let's see how that actually ends up for them. Where do they go? Yeah, they kind of just get stuck here in this, which is like a hill position, but still. Then they pull another max zone, and, you know, they have to make more difficult rotates. So they're playing Storm in this kind of game here, but they don't actually benefit out of it because there's no one to tag around them, and they have to waste time by running out and then back into their drop spot for this like strat to work. Now, knowing that, you can kind of see like where they struggle here. Whereas, you know, when I said the 0-0, and then they got 74 damage, which I imagine that's on Kirei's team as they rotated out towards them. 0-0. So they take 0 damage. So like Storm Surge wise, they are slightly above. But then, as we already know, if they pull like max distance zones later, then they're really going to struggle. Luckily, I mean, maybe they just made a really good rotate here. I'm not sure. In the 6th zone, they took no damage. But, you know, this definitely impacts you when you're trying to play a Storm strat like this. But you have really no options for Surge around you whatsoever. So in this next game, they actually managed to win it. And as you can see, the zone wasn't quite as bad. Obviously, we know they're not pulling a single drop zone on their drop spots whatsoever. Similarly, they left their drop spot. They go out in like the 1st and 2nd zone here. And then this time they actually rotate full south. So like rather than rotating back in, because obviously that didn't work for them whatsoever in the previous game, they've made an adaptation. And they key down south, who Josh bot is down here. So they get a free element to Josh bot. So that's 200 damage that they now have above. And then you can see they play Storm, come out on like full dead side. Zone pulls completely max distance for them. They get into this midpoint here, which is good because they've taken like no damage. And again, they pull another like max partial. So, you know, they don't have the benefits of like Sky and Scroll like they do. So if we watch like Sky and Scroll do here, they're still just sitting in the Storm, just chilling here, doing nothing from their drop. And then they're able to play Storm like way behind everyone else and then come out in this side. Obviously, they kind of landed in like the same position. But if you notice the rotation that each team does, like Sky and Scroll can stay like way further behind. I guess they're actually going last. So maybe this rotate actually isn't that good for Sky and Scroll. So maybe I'll take that back. But yeah, you still have like a max distance rotate for them. They don't really get the benefit of playing Storm on max zone pulls like this. But at least they made the adaptation to go down and like get an early refresh. So for the Summit, this is kind of what their all spawn situation is looking like. Kind of similar, you know, assuming they pull max zones, like they still have the same options. You know, one of the things that Ferdoxy said is that you can't just like bully one team around you. So you have the NA West team here, whose names I've already forgotten. Doxy and X-Spawn, that's those guys. So you can't just like key them every single game. That's not going to work 12 out of 12. You have Sky and Scroll and Curve and Veno, who you're absolutely not going to be able to farm Surge on 10 out, 12 out of 12. Well, 8 out of 8. Sorry, it's 8 games, not 12. You know, you can rotate all the way this way and fight these guys, but like Curve and Veno are going to be lurking in this area for Surge already, as we already know. North, you've got Nebs, Nathan, and Muzz and Sphinx, but I already thought, you know, Pete Puyo might try and... I already said Pete and Puyo might try and kill them. You Cammy, Harry, which I don't know how much they really got Surge on them at all, but they're not going to be a team that's going to let you like farm damage on them whatsoever. I'm not super confident about the drop spot for Focus and Thomas already, especially if they're going to keep playing the way they are. Like if they pull max zones, like they're already moaning about zones this season, you know, rightfully so. I don't see how this situation particularly helps. Hopefully they come up with a good game plan though. All right, so Coyo and Yuma were a Dark Dominion team, basically entirely uncon. I think outside of, I think there's a team like splitting around them. Right, just gonna get a little free lick early on. Guy just runs in, Must have random solo who's been around. Okay. So it seems like the strat that they're using, or were using, was just very, very similar to what we saw Pixie and Swizzy do, which was like up in the top corner, build on top of this base, a massive surge base, all metal. However, the difference is they did get this entire drop spot to themselves. So that one guy who was third partying around, I don't know if they were contested in every other game, because obviously I'm not watching every single match. I think surge for them, obviously on Asia as well, is going to be significantly easier. So I'm interested to see with their drop spot change up how they play. They have done the very smart thing and just go for an uncontested drop spot over to the west here. This is not the best drop, I will be completely honest with you. But, you know, they don't want to get involved with Cold, Rapid, and Swizzy Pixie off spawn. So I think for them, like, top 25, like, I would be very surprised if they didn't make finals. Okay, so it seems like they're not the type of team to play Storm. So they've rotated very, very early in to center 4th zone, as you can see. So they got way deep away from Dominion. So obviously one of the benefits of playing Dominion is that you basically can rotate anywhere quickly because of wherever the zone pools are already mid-map. So you've kind of got, like, you don't have that problem that Riptides has that we just showed. So they can kind of get early. They're not going to play Storm. I don't know how they're going to do that from this drop spot, because obviously that's going to be played very, very differently. It's not too far, but this takes way longer to loot. You don't have metal. So we'll see what the game plan is, you know, coming to the summit, but TBC. One thing I do like about every rotate that they've done so far, I know I just didn't show you at all, but just for reference, is the fact that almost every single rotate they do, they're instant and very, very early, which gives them a good position to like look back and go for elims. You know, getting into the 4th zone, they did that pretty early after getting a bit of damage. 6th zone, 5th zone rotate, everything has been super fast. So for me, when I look at their change of drop spot, you know, I'm not particularly concerned about them just spending far too long in one area, kind of like Thomas does based on his strat. So it seems like these guys are just going hard center and just, you know, making every rotate early. So I think for like a small region team, I think playing like that probably makes a lot more sense. This is crazy, right? They are, I was going to say not that side. They got 200 builds total. So 70, you know, 2/3 they could, you know, have max. And they just go straight for a pre-edit play. I love teams have this kind of aggression. Obviously, this is easier to do on, you know, Asia than any other region. But they, you know, hit the pre-edit on the wall. I actually don't even know if they hit that pre-edit there, to be honest. That looks like that might have literally just been the other player editing. But get a double refresh straight away. And now you've got, what, can't match. So, like, one of the main things a lot of the most successful teams do is, especially in this meta where you've got a lot of materials drained on every single partial, is just get a refresh before moving zones. I've been recording this video for like 4 hours. I can't even remember if I've already said that and talked about it earlier, but I know I have at some point because I talk about it in literally every single video. For guys like this who are very, very clearly open to like going for a fight, taking a refresh early, like that gives me a lot of confidence. In particular, just ones who can just wipe out a team very easily with a pre-edit. So one of the things that makes me lose a little confidence in how they're going to play coming towards globals is that they are still like very height focused. Through all of the moving zones prior to this, they've just been tarping, which has been great, but they've just been tarping on second height, staring up, looking up the entire time. So I'm not sure, of course, if this is something they do every single game. As we already know, there's going to be a lot of big competition on height coming into the summit. You know, you've got Veno who's trying to play this exact same strat. You have a lot of teams on EU who are going up. Obviously, like Clix and Higs, as we know, are just cycling height every single game already, depending if they want to change. Swizzy Pixie playing height. There's going to be a lot of really good height teams that are already doing the exact same strategy of taking height from the backside using nades. So now that if you have another team from another region trying the same thing, like I'm slightly concerned on how that would actually play out for them if they continue to try it. And this is obviously kind of the case for a lot of the smaller region teams, right? They get a better drop spot in their region. They manage to play height more because there's not as many good teams playing height. So, you know, a lot of them can perform much better on these smaller regions than they would be able to in the actual summit. So, you know, just based on how they've played, we'll see. We'll see. Man, this guy's crazy. I'd rather watch him free build than play on summit, I'll be honest. But hopefully we get some good Coyo clips come land. All right, last team I want to look at is SAS and Scary. It was both of their first grand finals, and they placed 9th and qualified to summit, which is really, really impressive. They are double controller, double Spanish, which means they're rubbish ping as well. And the first day they were going crazy, right? Look at the elims, like second with 10, 4, 3, 6, 4. Second day, not so good. Like they seem to, I guess that's probably an off spawn death. Maybe one of them died out of the sky or something. I don't really know the drop slot, but I want to watch this game and see how they popped off. What is this drop from them? Ooh, I need to use this tech, because I actually land here in solos. That's kind of interesting. Okay, they mantle off the top. Same thing. There's a slurp truck here. This is actually my solo drop spot, as I already just mentioned. Off the rip, there's a lot of teams around them. The problem with this drop spot in solos, I might actually end up moving from here, is the fact that there's always teams here. There's people here. There's tons of people here. And as you can see, there's a team like cutting off the loot down here. And these guys are probably going to go this way. That leaves you with like pretty minimal loot to play with. So kind of interesting on their strat. The one good thing about this drop, though, is that mats are crazy. Where SAS is now has basically cat wooden brick of like super fast harvesting. Where Scary was, has like cat metal instantly. We've only gotten 300. Ooh, insta-keyed as well. Yeah, it's kind of the problem, as I mentioned, right? Like, you can just get instantly keyed from the teams all around you. So hard not to take damage. So the fact that they were so consistent here is kind of nuts. And these guys are honestly just playing with scraps. Like 50 builds, 40 builds, couple, like they barely even have ammo here. That's madness. Basically just double sitting in a bush, waiting for a team to come up. Oh, poor Minori. Poor Minori with a double pump for the bush. That already? I don't know if Minori was 200 HP. I forgot for that. That's 300 plus 300 immediately. Tons of materials. Get out while you can. That doesn't seem like they even got any pistol ammo from that, which is kind of unfortunate. Instant loot. Zone, obviously we know zone was quite favorable for them. Like when you looked at the zones previously, the vast majority of them are in this area and they do drop here. So in this kind of instance where they get plus 300, they're basically set up for endgame as long as they get like mobility and enough heals and get like their mats capped up here. You know, Surge really shouldn't be a problem for them this match. So I don't know what they do every single match, obviously. In this game in particular, which was their best match, insta-kill kind of sets them up easily. So will that happen? You know, if the zones pull max every single game for them at Summit, like can they repeat this performance? Like, I don't know. Interesting. They are a fishing team. So one thing I think is really underutilized this season, which I'm going to make a short about, is the peppers, the pepperfish, what are they called? In particular, anyway, with this fishing rod, I swear is just super duper underrated this season. So you've got SAS sitting up on the base. They basically got cat mats, like not great heals, but you know, they can kind of counter the amount of bad loot they have from their drop spot just by sitting here fishing. Spicy fish, that's what they're called. I remembered. Spicy fish last 60 seconds from memory, which is like an entire rotate. And as we saw earlier in one of the peak clips, you have the spicy fish ready for a rotate. What they should do here is juggle those fish up. So for if they get a later rotate, they could just move even faster rather than using it here, because it is genuinely actually very good. Now, I did record the end game, but I realized my mic was just muted, unfortunately. But basically what I was saying was, I hope these guys are not like a one-day pop-off, because looking at the actual results from what we were seeing there, the first day they were doing really, really well, and then the second day they really fell behind. It's their first grand finals. They had one big pop-off, so I hope they're not just like a one-day wonder coming into the summit and they actually able to perform. I like the game plan. They can obviously perform well with kind of scuffed loot because they're really just working with absolutely nothing there. So fingers crossed for that. Like the video, subscribe,